Welcome, everybody. If you're new to the call, this is the TATL monthly pulse call, and we go through a format here every month, but it's an open forum, so you'll be able to engage and talk and partake. I'm gonna, if the guys will indulge me, I want to just start things off a little bit with a little bit of a rant, just to set the tone. Um, every once in a while, Frank, this is definitely a rant that you and I can co-opt. We can share this. That rant, it's actually a perspective. Every once in a while, you get to plant a flag in the ground and say, I actually have seen this before. Now, we haven't seen AI. We've never seen anything like this. But I'm very mindful, Frank, of what we went through 30 years ago, right about now. It's right about now I joined Keen and inherited that Resumix system. And we twisted that thing. You talk about client server, you talk about on-prem tech. We twisted that thing into a pretzel to make it do our bidding. It basically became a supply chain management system for COBOL programmers as we ramped up Y2K. And at the end of that, Monster came in and the other .coms came in, and we said, oh, our job's going to be over. They're going to automate recruiting. I mean, I remember distinctly over many cocktails in 97, 98, 99 with you and many others. What do we do? And then, things like 9/11 happened and reminded us that, slow down, fella. There's other things going on in the world. And then a lot happened, a lot changed between then and now, not the least of which on my mind is SaaS software. And I think, as I think about what we did, Frank, when we built out Resumix, we bolted on Monster, we bolted on all of the supply chain tools, and we managed that through a supply chain process out to our 40 branches and distributed them. We were pretty close to being autonomous. We were pretty close to being automated. And if you remember, Frank, they just brought us frames. Like we could set it up and configure it and how we want the lookup tables, what do we want the data to be, how do we want to parse the resumes, what are the workflows, how do we distribute these candidates, what are the rules, what is the governance of the system? We had to build all that from scratch. And that made us really smart at this stuff. And if you think about even the early Oracle deployments, they basically came in with a wireframe. They came in with a bunch of frames, and then we had to have the IP. We had to have the process, the workflow. We had to know what to do. They just brought in the technical frames, PeopleSoft and all of that, ultimately Workday. And then all of a sudden, right around 2000, 2001, they flipped the script on us and said, well, you're going to use industry best practices workflows. And we started using industry workflows instead of our own. And that led to a best practice model, which is really just lowest common denominator model.
Yes.
And for the last 25 years, that's the way we've been buying software. SaaS software. Think about all the stuff we've bought in 25 years. We get pitched, they've got the IP. We have to accommodate their workflow into our workflow. There's some customization, but that's a far cry from where we were 30 years ago when we built bespoke software on the ground, on-prem. We controlled it. It gave us a competitive advantage. Well, I think we're there again. I think right now we're at that same kind of inflection point, or Mr. Keen used to call it that. And I'm just going to tell you what's happening right now. And everyone on this call is going to know this is what's happening or has already happened in boardrooms and executive suites across America for the last 2 years. The CEO is reading the McKinsey report, looking at what his competitive landscape players are doing, and he's seeing AI and he's saying, okay, we got to deploy this stuff. They're doing it at scale elsewhere. He walks down the hall to the CFO, his wingman or whoever it is, but probably the CFO, and says, hey, are we on top of this? Are we looking at this stuff? And the CFO said, yeah, I think so. I think they're on it. Let me go kick some tires and find out what's going on with Agentic AI, and I'll get back to you. So that guy, the CFO, walks down the hall and says, okay, I got a choice. I could either go to the CHRO, who's actually should be right in the middle of this conversation, or I can go to the CIO. Where do you think he's going? He's going to CIO.
Yeah.
Every time he is going to the CIO because it's tech, it's technical, it's complicated, it's over his pay grade. He's the CFO. He just knows he needs to drive efficiencies, maybe headcount, EPS, blah, blah, blah. So they go, they have a beer, coffee, lunch, and they make a pact. The CIO and the CFO make a pact, like they always have. And then they start doing some discovery. They start laying out some technical workflows. They start forming committees, right? And then maybe then they call the CHRO into the room, right? And what I'm suggesting is we need to get in that work stream right there. TA needs to be in that discussion the way we were 30 years ago. We built our own stuff. You remember? We brought in the RD Rab guys, we brought in technical people, we configured our own stack. It was mission critical. And
And paid for it. A lot of times it was paid for by TA by cutting agency fees to fund, whether it was funding job boards or advertisements or even the tools directly. But yeah, I think there's a lot of organizations, large and small, where the decisions are coming from high above, and TA just has to take it and be responsible for it, especially when legal matters come up. They're now going to be, responsible for something they didn't choose or were not involved with or had no idea what the contract even looks like. But yeah, we can debate and discuss some of that, but we definitely have this right on our lap. Tamika, did you have a thought?
I did. This is something that has been on my mind for several months now. This was specifically with people analytics, but it expands to all parts of HR. Why is it that you think with HR we seem to be so stuck into the hole that we are in and we are unable to be part of the business strategy?
I'll answer that. That's real simple, man, because you're in the compliance business. You're in the legal moat business. HR is not here to advance the business. It's here to do that. Exactly the problem. That's exactly why our question today is, should TA report to HR? And I think it's time to, personally, I think it's time to really reflect on that because you're compromised. HR is completely compromised into this. They ultimately, their job is to protect the CEO, CFO, the board, and the corporation from exposure. That's their job. And so they're the ones that will receive the downstream layoffs from this. And what I've been saying, Tamika, for some time is TA, we used to be technical. We are a technical group of people. We need to follow that technical thought process and get in with the CIO, get up, way upstream in this process, and start inserting our will and having our say at that level. And this is like a today item, guys. And we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, just a little, but we got a lot of content to unpack here. But I'm putting a flag in the ground right now that this is the call to action. TA needs to own this. We have the capability of owning this. We've always addressed and dealt with cutting edge technologies. We have the case law. The case law on this is in our court. The three primary cases that are happening are talent acquisition related. We have all the tools, just like we did in 1996, to dominate this conversation and architect the solution and understand how it gets implemented at scale and have impact on that room. Sorry, I didn't mean to jump on that, but it just
No,
seems so
no.
clear
So
to
then
me.
how do we as HR in general change what we do so that the CIO, the CEO, CFOs take notice? And likewise, how can those people recognize our worth? Like
Yeah,
I just feel
Tamika,
like we're just in this
yeah.
block, this
Uh,
little hole.
love to jump in, especially on the people analytics, which if people do not know, you are an expert in this space. So if you have not had a conversation with with Tamika, please do. She is a master in this area. But think about basics and organizations recently consulting with the TA team had no idea what the 2026 hiring plan is. It did the people and culture team even know? No one I talked
That's
with
what it
know.
sounds
And
like.
it's like, well, David's saying we need to go upstream. Well, someone needs to go and schedule time with the CFO because the CFO has the plan. There is a people plan. If they don't have a people plan, the business has a bigger problem. But someone has the headcount plan, even if it's the private equity firm or whatever it is. And being able to have those relationships and being able to say, what can we do in TA to help drive the business, and where are there issues in the process? And so you've heard me say on some of our other calls that is this the year for TA to spread wings and to own onboarding or to own internal transfers or international transfers or even succession planning? That where does someone go? Where do they fit? Who's going to know that best? And there's debates and discussions, and we can talk forever about it. But what's been done, I think what David's saying over the last 25, 26 years has not moved the needle. Yes, many organizations where, in the cloud, or we're using the tools that someone else decided, hey, here's what we need to do for the masses. But we need to get into where we're owning it, where we're driving our own business processes to support the business goals.
Andrew nails it. Andrew nails it. When a function has specific business outcomes related to earnings, that seat shows up. Period. The reason we were on the front lines in the 90s is talent was equal to revenue. War for talent.
It was a driver.
We now that was a driver. Now we have the opportunity to reboot. Agentic AI is coming and it's going to perform labor functions. That should be our bailiwick. We should know how to do that. How to tie that back to earnings per share. That's the language that matters now. Productivity, utilization, how much can a bot do versus a human? What are the deployment schedules? How does this all work? And we need to be the masters of that. Speaking of masters, Master Burnett, I loved your piece. We're on the first slide, Jeff, so bear with us. Let this happen. This is usually like 1:20 of the hour. And I was thinking this might happen. Like this is the topic this year. By the way, guys, this is the only topic. Everything else is incidental or supportive or subordinate to this. And by the way, speaking of that, the architecture, this is the final system of record. This is the final system of record and the final UX. That's what we're playing with here. Master, great to have you, man.
Oh, thanks. I was just gonna tack off of Frank's comment. The last 25 years, our systems have become so hyper fragmented that when it comes to our people management systems, there is such strong disconnect between our performance management, between our goaling and team organization, between our workforce planning, between talent acquisition. If you look at all of the systems of record that span these systems, they all have a different view of the role. There is no unified context of what a role does. And when you start to really dig into their ideation of what a role is, it's so antiquated compared to the reality that there is no way for AI to step into this world and start to make deterministic decisions because there's no accurate context for it to do so. And so on the back of Tamika's comment, there's a lot of conversation going on in the CIO's office right now about is our data ready for AI? And it's not just a data issue, it's a context issue. And so, I think in order for AI to truly be impactful in any large organization, the first thing that has to happen is there has to be some unified context as to what it is we're trying to achieve and what the role breakdown is that is how we're applying labor to that situation. And it simply doesn't exist today. And the systems are so fragmented and broken that solving that is a significant hurdle.
If you guys haven't read Master's material, I just stumbled into it myself. And part 5, I think it was, Master. You got to read the whole series. And context is the last part that really caught my attention. Because context, to me, that's a business process, that's a workflow, that's the business dynamic, that's the strategic imperatives that we're operating under. It's the board level strategy for the company. Those are the metrics. Those are the things we need to be looking at. All right, great, Master. Thanks for coming in. I really appreciate it. I look forward to hearing more from you. Jeff, I guess we better get this call started, huh? We didn't even get out of the gates. This is awesome. Okay. This is going to be a central question. It already came up, and it came up last month, spontaneously, ad hoc. So I said, let's have a question about it. I don't think we can avoid this question. Because I think one of the dynamics, my observation has been, when we put TA back under HR in the 2000s, which we did, it had been ripped out in a lot of companies, certainly all the companies that were driven by talent. All the professional services firms had put TA under sales or under the COO or under the CEO directly. When we put it back under HR, something changed. It's Tamika's point. Something is lost in our specific focus and what we are. So the supply chain management component got blurred into a lot of other very valuable HR things. So the question is this the moment where we have to step out, where we have to decouple from HR? Not with any great distance, but does it functionally have to report to somewhere? I think we're really at a point where it's kind of like a line in the sand. Like we've got to really drive this in a different way than I think we have thus far. And I think there's a lot of individual practitioner stuff going on. And I hope there's some folks here today that are in the process of maximizing their usage of copilots and agentic, AI assistants and stuff like that. I'd love to hear what you're doing. We'd love to hear what you're doing and how you're maxing out your personal productivity. That's very important. First chapter in this discovery. We need to level set that today. If there's people out there, raise your hands. This is the time. If you really are driving, the use of AI at the user level, the IC level, to move the needle on your personal performance, that's the front half. That's the adopt part. That's the adopt part. There's another chapter. It's about to start opening. Steve, I'll come right back to you.
Yep.
There's another chapter that is the real chapter, the only chapter that ultimately will matter, is the deployment chapter. How is this being executed at the enterprise level? What are the workflows? Who's doing the design work? Who's running the show? Who's deploying this stuff? What tools are being used? What platforms? What intelligence is being infused? What governance models are in place? What auditing functions are in place? And are we in the rooms driving that? What strategies are we using to implement AI in your workflow? And how can that workflow be extended across the enterprise? And that's a work stream conversation that is probably going to go on. This is just going to start today. High level, let's level set, see where we are with this, baseline ourselves, and then probably have pop-up meetings throughout the year to go deep dive in committees, breakout kind of things like we used to do, to really control not only the narrative, but the technicals here. We need to be experts at the technicals on this one. How does this stuff work? How does it get deployed? We have to be the person in every company that we work for that is the go-to person for this stuff. When that CFO turns to the CIO and says, how does this need to get done? We need to be right around the corner saying, I know how it gets done, and I know how to deploy it at the enterprise level. Little different than the practitioner level, because you got to be cognizant of risk, exposure, and the case law that we're examining, eightfold being the last of it. Steve, jump back in.
Yeah, just from a standpoint, I'm going to jump. Actually, going to lower my hand. What I put in the chat is a super califragilisticexpialidocious prompt, 16,000 plus characters, which is essentially the pre-intake. I've presented this a couple of years back. This does more for. This gives the recruiter more information, the information they need to, when a hiring manager says, I just send me all the resumes, I'll know it when I see it.
Yeah.
To answer all those questions. Try it in your own environment. Anything in red is customizable. The industry name, the company, the URL, the job, the JD. This is if you have an existing one. I also have additions to create a JD out of signals from your competitors. Try it, and I think maybe a video for the group might be fun.
Awesome.
Master and I have talked about this.
Wow, excellent.
That's great.
Well, while people are waiting to raise their hands and to jump in, and thanks, Steve, for doing that, I just had a couple of thoughts and hopefully to help get the conversation going with some of this. A year ago, when we first were talking about some of this, and everyone's throwing the AI word around with what it can do and what it can't do, one of the pet peeves is, from a TA perspective, is we may have these generic HR job descriptions. Here's the official blah, blah, blah thing that comp uses, whatever. And how do we turn that into an advertisement, which to me would be a great use of these tools within the ATS. And what I've recently heard is Greenhouse actually has a button that you can activate that not all clients have activated it yet, which blows my mind. But to have a button that takes this generic crap and then make advertisement, great use of AI there. And for those that have Greenhouse that haven't turned it on, amazing to me that you haven't. But at the same time, all these big players that have these tools that say we're a great ATS or whatever, like, where are you? And they'll say, well, we use AI and we have AI all over the place. Like Eightfold AI cannot go 2 sentences without talking about their AI engine. Yet much of what we do in TA isn't AI, right? If I open up a rec and look at who recently applied, there's no AI in that. So let's get serious about it. And then also Phenom People, they've really done a lot of tools and really taking AI head on but have people enabled, which components have they, how have they structured that, what have they done? So I just wanted to throw some of those out to get some conversations going. Bill, I saw your hand first and then Master.
Yeah, Frank, I was going to mention, I just spent the last 2.5 days at the Phenom conference.
How was?
So obviously, everything that they're talking about is AI. And I listened to presentations from United, MasterCard, HP, Corning, Thermo Fisher, just to listen for how they're leveraging that tool and the rest of their TA and HCM ecosystem. And I got to tell you, the use of agents is incredibly basic. We're talking about automation. It's not the true AI work yet. So whether it's Workday or SAP, and I talked to a lot of my peers that are out there that have run talent acquisition organizations, we're not there yet. Although these vendors are promoting that, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, we have it, but their clients haven't really been able to either activate it yet or really find the ROI. I couldn't find one presentation, and I tried to get as many as I could, where I actually had somebody that had something that was really relevant and was able to show ROI or some sort of, we were talking about cost or how do we save money or earnings per share. Nowhere yet. I just have not been able to find it as we go
You
through
do
it. So it's
have
just
to start
interesting. I know
somewhere.
we're going to do Unleashed and Transform a lot. When we go into some of those, but I'm really trying to listen for those large enterprise organizations. Haven't figured it out yet, and how they're trying to leverage some of these large, HCM tools to be able to take advantage of the development of these agents. So I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah,
I
I'm glad
couldn't
you
find
did.
it yet. Couldn't find it yet.
I don't think there's so much that's unknown. And just my observation, Frank and Bill, is that this is definitely an over your skis. That there's an on-ramp and an off-ramp. And a lot of companies chose the off-ramp first. Let's get rid of the people. Let's do some downsizing. Let's right-size our EPS. Let's get to a level of performance and productivity on the hope that AI will replace those cycles. And then there's an on-ramp where someone's got to deploy it now. And the ROI, the establishment of metrics, KPIs. How do we know what these things are doing vis-a-vis the human that it replaced or could replace? We're going to have to come up with a whole set of algorithms and metrics and KPIs around that performance management, agentic performance management. That's something we should own. How are these things being measured? Again, the three cases that are going to give us governance models are in the acquisition side. So that gives us a window, a thread to pull that gets us in front of legal and gets us sort of in those right rooms where we can start having that input. Remember, Frank, you remember this. We invented all those metrics. What are the metrics that Keen was most interested in? Oh, EPS. How do we equate that to a butt in a seat? We knew down to the dollar level what a placement meant financially. We need to get back to that way of thinking. That was a great call out, Bill. Master, back to you, bud.
I'm just going to again tie a couple things together. I think what Bill highlighted, it doesn't matter what tool or platform, whether it's the large oracles or the Workdays or it's the smaller platforms, everything that they've implemented so far are just basic call outs to a large language model, and they're mostly focused on language optimization. Let's take a crappy, low fidelity, horribly reading document and let's make it sound sexier. It's not doing anything to refine the signal that we need to match against. There's no incorporation of what are we trying to achieve in this role? How does this role tie back to the organization's broader objectives? Those things that would attract a top performer or a high performing person to the role, that's still fundamentally missing. There's nothing about team dynamics that are present in that to increase the signal match. So what you end up doing with all of these tools is to produce a generic document that performs well. It performs well from an attractiveness perspective. And then you throw matching algorithms against that, and you end up in matching to a much higher population than is actually relevant for that role. So it's actually contributing to the problem of we have too many applicants that we have to filter through. It's creating this self-fulfilling loop of crap.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter. And Phenom was mentioned in this. Phenom this time last year introduced, what was it, 33 new agents? I don't know, maybe 4 of them got deployed. Um,
Yeah.
it's a tiny fraction of what was actually being talked about. And so when you look at organizations, they are playing with these things, but they're playing in such profoundly short-sighted ways. I talked to one organization yesterday, a large surgical equipment manufacturer, and they had every recruiter optimizing job descriptions independently using their own prompts. So you've got 17 different articulations of organizational brand. You've got zero presentation of how content is being presented about the roles, differing templates. And on the same time, just last week, talked to a large pharmaceutical company that was engaging with one of the AI interviewing firms in a trial. They had given 5 different high volume roles, very different outputs required in the role. Yet the AI interview fell back to the same base heuristics for all 5 roles. So it didn't matter what role you were interviewing for, the AI interview was exactly the same.
Yeah.
So that's not telling anyone anything. It's not actually improving the statistics. And I think that's the biggest challenge is no one is stepping back and saying, how are we going to deploy this in a way that helps us achieve something?
Exactly.
It's deployment for the sake of deployment, and it's build for the sake of saying we have an AI agent. That's not moving the needle.
That's so spot on. You got me excited because this goes back to leadership. This goes back to TA leadership, or whatever we end up calling ourselves, you know? And we know that stuff. The stuff you're talking about, that's actually, some of that is what we do for a living. And tying everything back to an ROI and just good old fashioned leadership is what is needed here to drive this. Ken, you're up.
Hey, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity to connect here. I did want to touch base on that earlier comment, which is a theme throughout here on the reporting relationship of TA, right? So I've reported into finance, I've reported into HR, I've reported into operations, I've reported into CEOs, COOs, right? And I think this issue, just my own opinion on this, reporting into HR. So you have a CHRO. They have a different agenda. And so I think sometimes the TA piece is muted underneath that kind of structure. It should be certainly an equal partnership. I mean, we bring them in, they keep them there, right? Keep them motivated, keep them working productively. And so it's a strong partnership, but it needs to be a healthy relationship, right? But I think also, I just wanted to make this point because the discussion is, how do we drive all of this, right? The tech and the strategy, and how do we move that needle, right? And so for me, part of that is going back to some other comments. I mean, from a metrics and analytics standpoint, what's the value that we're bringing? What's the ROI on a TA side, right? And so I've always looked at, and I think I've mentioned this before, but when I go into a TA role, it's not just filling positions, managing a team, right? And recruiters certainly fill positions. It's filling positions that have an impact to the business, right? And so very easily in a health setting, I can say, well, where's contract labor? Where are we contracting out? That's expensive. Where's the overtime, right? Where's the utilization, right? And so looking at from a business performance, right, gets the attention of a finance person and operations people. And you back that up with some metrics, right? And I think it's important for TA to have TA leadership have regular cross-functional meetings, right? We need to be in the room with IT, right, finance and operations, perhaps a couple others, because first of all, we say, okay, how do we get tech into TA? How do every company saying, oh, we've got it, we're sprinkling it into our technology. Well, there's IT, heads of IT, right? CIOs, they're going, well, we're not sure what our strategy is for the whole company yet, cross-functionally, right? Across all the entire organization. So kind of time out, right? And so you need to have a strong partnership, I think, with IT as it relates to, maybe the finance department's using a different, AI, and legal's using something, or, so I think those are considerations. As much as we want to, you have to look at the structure that's operating and how do we manage to move that needle within the structure and get attention.
I mean, these are all great call outs, every single one of them. All we can do today, I think, is hope to kind of baseline, put the training wheels on this bike. We're nowhere near, clearly evidenced already by the first half hour of this conversation, we're nowhere near taking the training wheels back off. I think we're at a perfect moment to have this conversation and drive these definitions and understand the differences between, and we're not going to go through this whole slide, Jeff. That's not going to happen. We can share this with the group and we'll build out from these slides, build out from this deck and put it out online. But we got to understand what the differences are between these different flavors of AI. And what I'm most interested in is the kind of AI that I read about in the McKinsey report. And that's the same AI that the CEO is reading. That's the report. Those are the case studies. Then they're looking at what maybe Elon did at Twitter and what everyone has done since and saying, okay, we got to catch up with these guys. That is agentic AI. That is workflow and business process automation with agentic AI. And that's really what this is all about. Starts with these definitions here. We will maybe break these down, I think on a different call, Jeff. I think we got into this. We would never get out of it. But I want everyone to kind of like think about level setting against this, adding to this, correcting if we've missed anything, and then we'll modify it going forward. This is just the start of a conversation today, chapter 1.0. So Bill Malcolm, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm struggling a little bit because so I'm at the full other end. I'm kind of through the tunnel on the other side, having agents create their other agents and everything. But having been through this journey as deep as I am, I can tell you this: it's not that difficult. I go back to what Bill Musman was just saying. It's not difficult. It really isn't. You talked earlier about prompting. Reverse prompting is huge. Ask whatever AI LLM you're using what it can do for you. You have to have an imagination. Don't be afraid to say, listen, can you act as an executive recruiter that does specifically this? And what is your confidence level in doing that? Start small, do that reverse prompting. Try all the LLMs that are out there. I mean, you'll probably see this, you'll go broke trying to keep up with buying Grok and Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT and Anthropic, Claude, you'll go broke by doing that, but you can get a free bit from each one of those every day. Start there, see which one you find the most comfort in. Do know, though, that the AI LLMs will start to throttle back, especially the free versions. And then if you go to a $20 or a $50, the more you pay, as you could imagine, the more you get. So keep that in mind throughout that. But definitely don't be afraid to ask it, even to the point where I'm at with the agentic. I just ask it, can you do this? It'll let me know if it can or not. And if it can, I just let it run with it. It's a really crazy world.
That to me is, I suppose, so great, Bill. Thank you so much. And we look forward to all learning that from you and from other people like you. That to me is table stakes.
Yeah.
From a leadership perspective, from a deployment perspective, from an enterprise board level, that's just table stakes. And that's not to minimize it. We have to have the table stakes. We have to have the chips in our hands. The big payday that is happening right now is at the enterprise level. Is how is this being deployed, architected? I'm going to keep hammering this and hitting this home because that's very different than enabling individual performance. And what is the governance? What is the security? Where's the firewall? What's the legal frameworks? On and on. Like everything we should be experts at. What are we exposing when we just fire up an LLM and a ChatGPT prompt inside the firewall? Like you're not at your desk at home. You're inside the corporate firewall and you do what you just said, Bill. I wonder what that means. A little different exposure for the corporation. I think that's incumbent upon us as a group to define some of those things, learn what's happening around us, and take the lead. Frank, I know you're trying to jump in.
No, I'm totally agreeing with that and the usage and starting small and all that. I think some organizations, like you said, got ahead of their skis and Jeff Taylor mentioned a big example a few months ago where all these organizations, or so many organizations, let's get rid of software engineers. We're going to let code build code by itself. And Jeff made the comment of, hey, I'm not going to fire you to bring on the technology. Hey, software engineers, I'm going to fire you if you're not leveraging these tools to be more productive. And we should all be embracing and trying things. To Bill's point, try a bunch of things, find what we like, find what we don't like. But if we're not trying, or we're refusing to do things the new way, then that's when we should react. So I really liked what Jeff had said, and maybe I didn't frame it as well as Jeff would have. But sorry, Jeff, I see you smiling there. But I think your point was good.
There's further definitions. I mean, these are different animals. To Bill's point, which was spot on, we need to learn how to use this stuff. Obviously, it's table stakes. To me, it's like using Google or Word or Microsoft Excel. We just need to know how this stuff works. And if it's easy, that's great to hear. It makes me a little nervous. My experience, things that are a little too easy to implement, they come back to bite you from time to time. I don't know. Call me crazy. Master, go ahead.
I fully applaud everyone experimenting. I think where the challenge comes in, especially for a large organization, is when you're using any form of AI for a deterministic output and not understanding what the constraints are the AI is using to rank, score, or basically produce that output. So for anyone who is experimenting and asking an AI to rank or evaluate the quality of the answer for, say, an interview or a screening question, to not understand the logic the AI is using to produce that output, that's where you walk into a significant risk.
Right on. So spot on. That's great. Andrew, welcome.
There we go. I think one of the things we've been talking about, what can you do with an agent as you create it? What can you ask it to do, whether it's regardless of the LLM? You can also give it instructions on what you are going to prohibit it to do. And so one of the first things, and so you have to have humans in the loop on any number of regulations, any number of actions, but you can tell the agent you are now not allowed to do 5 things. And I think when you're trying to create a solution for yourself, I would start there. Have those conversations internally about what are we not going to do because we've made these decisions, or they're financially not safe, or they're not politically safe. But start with 5 things that you're going to say, this agent's not going to do that.
Right. That's guardrails. How about that for a set of controls that gives us a sense of mastery? Scott Lipinski, look, dude, I'm there with you. I need a primer on this stuff too. We're all over our skis with this stuff. Where to start? We're going to figure this out together as a group. Nobody gets left behind. We all learn this together. To different degrees of execution, capability, technicals, all different. But Scott, don't think you're alone. Quite the contrary. These guys that are talking, they're just ahead of the curve. They're really smart, and we're very lucky to have them come on these calls and teach us all. We will level set first. Where are we? Training wheels. Figure this out. Kindergarten. Just like, what's the nomenclature? And I suspect many of the C-level executives that are doing all this stuff, they didn't do that. They cut the rope line. They want the objective without the sweat. That's the problem with some of this, Frank. Is like there's like too much reward and that's what I'm hearing today. The governance, the guardrails, what was just said. Like we can back into that level of structure and own that, and it would be really smart to do. But Scott, don't think we'll catch up, and we did it before. This is where this is hauntingly familiar. We did it before, and we're going to do it again.
Yeah, totally agree and amen. And maybe we can, help with, putting some thoughts together on an upcoming call about, here's some of the steps or stages for our TA organizations to go through versus so many people believing the salesperson that you go 0 to hero. I mean, I've been at some organizations where they believe they turn on Workday skills, and now they're a skills-based organization just by turning it on, because the salesperson said that, and they just truly believed it because you have one big dog talking to another big dog and not including the people that are tactical that can ask questions.
This is primer stuff. We'll make this content available to everybody. It'll obviously be out on the YouTube channel. And this is the first session of this. I have a feeling, Frank, we're going to end up in a training module here for all of us. We marshal this. Remember what we did when we implemented all that tech. And Dave Williams, I think you're out there. You were there. We had to have a training layer on top of it. Same Scott Lipinski, same thing. How does Resumix work? We didn't know. We had to invent it. And we had to train. Remember, the millions of dollars we spent on behavior modification and training and how to use it. We're there now with this stuff too. All right, there's some news stuff going on. We're not going to get to all of it today because we only got like 5 minutes left. I'm so happy, Frank, with what's happened here today. In fact, before we go to that, I see someone coming in hot. Taylor, on the mic.
So I appreciate this group. It seems like we're dealing with like a couple big issues and one like side really important issue. One is like a question of should TA be under HR or not? That question feels like it's in some ways different completely than the AI question. And I think in the AI question you're asking is like, it's upon us. Like, how do we start? How do we get this going? I might suggest, I think this group has a lot of horsepower that we potentially introduce the idea of some pods, and they might be a pod of people that are interested in this idea of TA under HR. And maybe we set some goals for these pods, like all of 2026, that we would like to have a white paper by the end of the year that comes out from 1,000 TA people that says, here is our thinking about this. And then around the AI thing, this one scares me, like in the way we're doing it here. It's like, it's a little bit of what I would say is sort of like a hype machine, and everyone is like coming in with their angles of this thing. But it seems like we could do a pod where we try to address like the 2 or 3 kind of key issues around AI and start to break it down and bring it back to the group, and then theme some of our meetings monthly with this idea that we're going to grab this theme right now. And I don't know, Frank's going to lead that group, and Joey and Karen are the presenters. And then the next month, David, you're going to lead this group, and Jeff and Mary are the presenters, or something like that. Because I worry, like we've been asking these questions now a lot of the last 6 or 8 months in different flavors of sort of the same thing, but we're trying to figure out how to move the ball forward. So that was just my thing I wanted to mention.
It's spot on. I so appreciate that. And we couldn't have done it, Frank, if you remember back when we were implementing Monster and we were implementing all that hot job stuff on top of Resumix. Right. Without that learning team that we built, remember that learning team thing, Frank? When we had the power committee that basically Jeff is talking about, they became thought leaders. And every one of those guys went on to be CEOs and SVPs of TA, and there's some killer people.
And how many people have thought leaders within their TA teams? So it's a great point. So thanks, Jeff, for raising up the pod.
And we will do that. That is actionable.
Great idea.
Great CTA.
Okay.
All right, real quick. There's so much. We're not going to get through all this today. We got some labor pressures. Not a surprise. And Jeff Taylor will expect you to lead one of those groups, by the way. And we lost some jobs. I don't know what here is to talk about other than clearly there's an off ramp, and there's some economics. There's some things that are happening in the marketplace. It's a dip. Maybe it's temporary. Maybe it's systemic. We don't know yet, but there's clearly something going on, some friction. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about this.
Well, and January numbers were updated as well, like they always get updated. So I think that's balancing the hype mechanism as well. Yeah. It needs to be managed.
Yeah, and just before you said that, I want to pick up on what Taylor said. He's so right. The hype machine is driving the dialogue. We got to strip the hype. We fall to it too. I get animated. We all get it. We got to get down to brass tacks, man. This is go time.
There's an expression I just heard. Be careful not to follow the hype machine, but always join the mega trend.
Yeah, bang.
And I just thought that was interesting because we can get so like blown off course by the hype, but there's a mega trend here happening. So we need to figure out how to involve ourselves in it.
Spot on.
I like that.
Jeff Zabaka, we got 2 minutes. What's the most important slide left for us to reveal? The poll?
Yeah, we got some news. We got the poll results.
We're not going to get to the news. Here's the news in 30 seconds. Oracle's got problems. Workday's got problems, and New York is taking legal action. There's your headlines. Oracle's over their skis. They have some problems with their system. We know about that. And Amazon had a problem with their. They lost some. They got a runaway bot of some kind. We just don't have time to unpack this news. We'll have to come back to it, Jeff. We just don't have time.
And then the block layoffs, Jack Dorsey.
Yeah,
was attributing AI to that.
That's the signal through the noise. We got to listen to that one. That to me is connected to me personally to the Elon Musk Twitter thing. Like kind of like, wow, he didn't just do that, walk in with a kitchen sink and whack 85%. Well, he did, and Twitter didn't miss a beat. And we can debate the propriety of that and all that, but I think all these CEOs are seeing that trend and saying, "Go time for us too. We got to make full use of this agentic AI stuff and move forward." All right, Jeff, we can rock forward.
Yeah, so to run back where the poll is at right now, 30% said it should remain within HR, and 70% said no, TA should not report to HR.
Yeah, it just come back to that for clarity, in my opinion. I don't know if it really matters. At the end of the day, I think it's more about, and Jeff just touched on this a little bit, it's more about focus. Is who's going to focus on this? HR's got a lot on its plate, a lot of 360-degree responsibilities at HR. This should be our obsession. This agentic rollout and the effect it has on the labor that we hired and the new labor we're going to have to hire to support it, that should be our obsession. So that's really who reports to who. I don't know if it matters. If we're leaders, we're leaders. We're going to lead from wherever we are. Christian, welcome.
Hey, I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I think by us reporting up into HR diminishes our level of accountability. I think TA leaders, maybe we just don't have a strong enough TA leadership throughout, or they're used to holding it through HR, but HR has always been the one that's carried the bucket and we've just kind of sorted behind them like a little kid. And so it kind of diminishes our accountability in all of it, and also diminishes our voice in it as well.
Yeah.
So
we used to joke, we used to call it the redheaded stepchild of HR.
Yeah, exactly right. So if we want to hold ourselves to a higher level of accountability and be seen as those people that have a high level of accountability, then I think we need to step out behind the shadows of HR and report it. Even if it's a chief people officer, that's fine. But we need to be seen as a separate issue. As you already pointed out, HR is there for compliance. We're not there for compliance. We're there to build a business.
Great call. Frank, my final word on this is in the 90s, there is no way we were going to implement Oracle, Workday, PeopleSoft, Recruitsoft. No effing way was that app coming into our sandbox. We want best of breed. And to Christian's point, when that kind of slid over, that reporting relationship got embedded back at HR, then Workday rolled out. ERP rolled out. Best in class became secondary. Best in breed technology went to the wayside in favor of, proposal to cash ERP.
I don't know, David. I don't think there are any recruiting leaders out there who voluntarily chose Workday. I think that was a decision driven by the CFO's office and not.
No, well, you got to help make the business case.
That's what I'm saying, Master. 100%. That's what I'm saying, Master. Is that the tech we chose in the 90s was anything but ERP. We were the envy of every organization, and it wasn't just Keen. It was all the big five: IBM Global, Accenture, Anderson Consulting, Sapient, Viant, Science. All of us build our tech stacks proprietary to TA because it was best in breed. And it had CRM technology that the sales organization ended up stealing. Period. Yeah. That's my final word, Frank.
Yeah, this is great. And thanks everyone for participating. Please connect with one another. Please connect with us if we're not first degree connections. Let's make those happen. Please make sure when you're connecting with people, you tell people how you know them. So they don't just get a random LinkedIn message, but please keep talking to each other. It's important, and leverage that private LinkedIn group if you're not already on it. Take care, everybody. Thanks and happy hunting.
Great session. Thanks, guys.